Once again, welcome to the War Room. In our last episode as the Kingdom of Goryeo, we basically finished our conquest of Japan. There are still some holdout clans, but that's entirely on Paradox for not coding the Sengoku Jidai properly, because these clans just appeared like wild weeds out of territory that I hold myself, which is definitely not cool, Paradox, and I was unable to annex them even though I had 100% occupation over them. But that's all history. We are going to annex them in this episode no matter what, and we are going to turn our gaze beyond Japan into the New World, because we have actually researched the New World Advance. And let me remind you, our goal in this series is to research max. We are doing quite well on that front. We already have a 3.18 monthly research progress as of the year 1454. We could probably use a bit more. I would definitely be happier if this was at 3.50 or something like that. And for that we need to increase the power of our liturgical language, and we also need to increase our average literacy a little bit more. Now, with that being said, I am going to take a further look into our exploration missions, because we did engage in a bit of exploration. We did explore parts of Siberia. We should probably consider colonizing, because ivory, fur, gold, all of the goodies are out here in Siberia for us, that we can trade them to our markets in East Asia. And at the same time, we also want to consider expanding into Southeast Asia, because Southeast Asia has one thing in abundance, that is cloves, the premium spice of this game. And you know what they say, the spice must flow. So with all of that being said, I am going to continue integrating Japan. We have a fair chunk of the island integrated already. Our cabinet is working overtime essentially to get through all of the integration processes, and I presume that this is going to be all green within the next 20-30 years at most, and then we can start expanding eastwards and integrating some of our vassals here. We already have the occasional core or tree on them, so it's going to be easier done than said. Yeah. And then once we have Japan fully integrated into our domains, we're going to again turn our gaze southwards and eastwards into the land of the rising sun. Not Japan, the Americas. So it turns out I get a bit too greedy with marketplaces in the Kaesong market, and we have a trade capacity of 954, but a good chunk of it is stuck in quite a few very marginal trades. Luckily, there is an easy fix, and that is going to be fur. I'm going to build up all the fur RGOs that belong to our vassals and fiefdoms in Manchuria. That is going to simply flood the market with more fur than we can trade. And if we look at some of the other markets here, fur is still in extremely high demand across China. And a good chunk of that is simply because they have way too many nobles for their own sake. And what we're going to do is we're going to act as the middleman. We're going to buy all the fur from the markets of Siberia, get it to Kaesong, and then we're going to re-export it to China, which I presume we're already doing to some extent, but we're just going to massively scale it by building up fur across Manchuria. And this is actually extremely easy to do. You can simply remove the default tag for owned locations, and then I'm going to write fur here, and then I'm just going to mass expand the RGOs. It will say that this is not going to be profitable in 3 years, or not very profitable, but trust me, we are not after the actual RGO profits here. We are after getting all of that sweet Manchurian fur into the market so that we can trade it. And that is definitely going to be possible by simply expanding the RGOs. And I'm also going to start colonizing the Sakhalin Islands in order to get even more fur into the market. And we're probably going to start colonizing the coast of Kamchatka and the eastern reaches of Siberia as well, because these areas contain ivory. And I know what you're thinking, no, this is not mammoths that we are hunting, this is walrus and narwhals, whose the trade of whose tusks, was a big pastime of Arctic settlers, and it's going to be fairly significant for us as well, because guess what? Some of these markets down in China are also starved for ivory, even though it doesn't show up here right now. I'm fairly confident that we can also sell ivory to East Asia, because there's usually a fairly high demand for it in the Chinese markets. And honestly, given how little the colonial charters cost us, it would be a shame if I didn't actually have at least a couple colonial charters running all the time, because this is just going to cost us 1 ducat per month, and we do get a minus 50% decrease from this being our only charter, and the Age of Discovery gives a flat minus 25% as well. Do keep in mind that all of these colonial charter maintenance costs are additive, so as soon as you get a single charter, it's going to cost you the normal amount, and a second charter is going to simply erase all of the additional minus 25% that you get from the Age of Discovery. So the more charters you get, the more irrelevant your colony maintenance bonuses actually become. And since this is the Age of Discovery, we might as well discover some stuff ourselves. We already know of a new land beyond the seas that has a fairly strange northern coast. So I'm going to queue up a couple explorations to figure out what exactly this piece of land here is. And we're also going to go eastwards into the Pacific, explore some of these smaller islands here, and let's see what we get. Let's see what is out there. We have plenty of cash flowing into our coffers. For some reason the tribute payments are fairly good this time of the year, so I'm going to get a couple more colonies set up. In fact, we're going to go both north and south. In the north, I'm going to create a couple colonial charters in the coast of Siberia. Let's say, shall we go for this as well? Maybe not. And in the south, we are finally going to start colonizing the Spice Islands. I'm going to prioritize the locations with close, and these are starting to get pricier, so I think this is going to be it. And this should cover basically all of the uncolonized closed locations. Oh, there's one more over here. You know what, it's just 22 ducats, I'm going to grab that one as well. So this should cover all of the uncolonized closed locations. And we will keep expanding in the East Indies in the near future, maybe not in this episode, definitely in the next one. And we are definitely going to look towards getting especially these 3 locations under our control, because these locations, they get such a massive boost, 500% boost to their close output, that having them alone is going to be the game changer here. I mean, just look at that, 108 ducats, 101 ducats, and 134 ducats in base tax, simply from close. So in the mid 1400s, the factional strife event actually changes, and you have access to 2 new factions, the Sardim and the Hungu. And these are actually very different from the earlier factions. One of them gives you clergy satisfaction and tolerance of the true faith, as well as a bit of spiritualist push, whereas the other one pushes you towards centralization and gives you monthly centralization progress, and also a bit of crown power. 10% is honestly not really anything to write home about. And on the other hand, we do have extra tolerance of the true faith, which is always nice to have. So I think in this scenario, I'm going to go with these guys. But at some point we might want to go for the Hungu, assuming that we can defeat our decentralizing push from having all of those fiefdoms and vassals. Our integration process is going ahead splendidly as we gained, I believe, 7, 8, oh, a bunch of different cores in the same tick. I'm going to urbanize every single one of these locations, and again we're going to be building libraries, temples and Confucian schools in them for the extra control and literacy. And we've gained access to open sea exploration as well as a massive boost to our colonial range. This unlocks areas of the map which were simply off limits to us earlier in the game, and we will be able to explore the Pacific and Indian Oceans using the new open sea exploration mission option. I'm going to queue all 5 or 6 of these, and soon enough our knowledge of the world will grow exponentially. We can also proceed with the annexation of some of our smaller vassals, especially in Western Japan, and I'm going to enjoy the process. For example, this vassal is only going to take us 1.5 years or so. They are much smaller, we have a much higher cultural influence than them, and we do even have a bit of extra centralization that makes the whole process just so much smoother. As our colonies grow, they also open new avenues of exploration for us in Siberia, and we're definitely going to begin exploration missions of the newly revealed areas immediately. Even now, our voyages of exploration are bearing fruit, and we have discovered the Eastern Australia Sea. I'm going to go further and explore the southern coast of Australia as well, and maybe even the southern Pacific currents, which seem to have opened to us now that we know our way around Australia. And in fact, this is going to be a very ideal spot to begin our exploration from our new colonies in the East Indies. Well, that was certainly unexpected, but we have actually been proclaimed as the cultural hegemon, which not only does it allow us to assimilate entire areas at once, it also allows us to force change court language in other countries. I'm not quite sure on whom we can exactly apply this, like I think we are already able to do it in our vassals because, or maybe not. Can I do it with someone else? Is it under hostile actions? Where exactly is this? I'm going to dig a bit and try to figure out how we can change people's court language, because that can actually be fairly useful to make Japanese language spread, and if it does spread, it's going to increase in language power, which in turn is going to give us more research points per month. I guess you can only do it in your vassals, but that's still pretty neat. I'm going to just implement Japanese as the court language across all of Manchuria, and you know, that's going to give us a bit of extra research most likely. Our colonies in the Spice Islands are coming along splendidly. We already have 2 locations colonized with the closed trade good. Now, I'm not quite sure whether I want to keep these as part of our empire or not, because the most we can get is 40% control with a core and another 20% coming from the bailiff, and 40% means that these will barely break even or maybe not even break even, so I'm not quite sure what to do with them. On the other hand, we're eventually going to create a vassal in the Spice Islands once we conquer some more to hold the land for us, so I think I'll just hold them for now, and then when we form a couple vassals here, I'll just give them to them, and the vassals will have both better control and they will have better access to trade compared to us, and we will just be able to divert trade and build a bunch of marketplaces in their locations to monopolize the spice trade. I'm also going to start another colony in the islands here, the Sumatran Islands, and the idea here is we want to get closer to Europe, and we want to have a base for further exploration into the Indian Ocean. And our colonization efforts are bearing fruit in northern Sakhalin. I'm not quite sure whether I want to add this to Bolon or if I want to create another vassal here. Let's see. Okay, so Bolon actually has decent proximity all the way down to the coast. And if I were to urbanize this location for them, build a couple wharfs and stuff, they could easily handle this for us. So I'm going to feed Sakhalin to Bolon as well. And of course we're going to max out the fur Argios on the island. I'm going to build these couple. The lumber and beeswax can remain where they are for now. And as soon as the southern sections have been colonized, I'm going to do the same to them. We're also slowly but surely annexing our vassals in Japan, and the annexation of Echizen was complete. Since we accept practically all Japanese cultures, all of this area came to us as cores, and obviously I'm going to urbanize it and build up libraries and Confucian schools here. As far as proximity to capital is concerned, this area isn't exactly doing great, but I'm guessing it's going to improve over time, especially as we tack up. And let's see, do we actually have... Oh, of course not. I'll also set up a new fleet to increase maritime presence in this section of the coast. And the domain of Toki is next up on the chopping block. I believe that they have quite a few high rises in their locations, which were built through state support. I'm also going to destroy the castles here, and thankfully most of this area is already urbanized, so all we have to do is build up the libraries and Confucian schools. We have unlocked the Mercury Patio, which in a normal run this would be a great building to have. We have 7 gold and 6 silver mines in Korea alone, so this is going to give us maybe 100 extra base tax. But there is one small problem, Mercury. We have literally no mercury in the Kaesong market. We're only importing a tiny amount from the Manchurian area to cover the needs of our hospitals, and I'm guessing we're going to have to increase imports in order to cover the demand of our mercury patios. Nonetheless, of course, I'm going to mass build these bad boys, and for now we're going to build them in Korea. I will take a look at Japan, see if they're worth building, see if the locations have more than 60 control, because if not, this might actually cost us in slider expenses compared to simply not building them. Foray has also been annexed, and honestly this is probably a fairly good place to stop. Like, I guess we have most of the areas that we can exercise effective control over. Just ignore this hasn't updated yet under our direct rule. And if we try to push further east, we are probably going to run into some trouble here regarding proximity and therefore control. Now when we get a second naval governor in, I believe, the Age of Reformation, but I'm not quite sure, it could be absolutism too, I will definitely annex the eastern portions of Japan as well, and probably plop down another local governor here, and that should allow us to keep most of Japan in check. There is another option here actually that we haven't quite considered. That would be moving our capital to Dongne, which I believe has a river. Yes, it does have a river, and also it has a fairly decent natural harbor suitability. Much better, in fact, than our current capital at Kaesong. And it's also more centrally located in Korea, so what would happen is we would be able to exercise control through the western coast of Korea, through the eastern coast of Korea, and through most of Japan. And if we can exercise control over western Japan through our capital, we would be able to move our naval governor to eastern Japan and keep annexing all of these small nations over here. But of course, that's going to take a while, and ideally I would like to make Dongne into a city first, so it's going to take a bit for the population to grow. I believe you need 30,000 to make a city. Yep. So we're just 600 people short, and that's going to be covered in a very small amount of time. I also keep forgetting about how utterly cheap the trade offices are compared to the benefits that they bring. So I'm just going to mass build a bunch of them. Oh, and we can also build them in locations that belong to my vassals. Lovely. Alright, I'll just mass build them. They don't really cost all that much to build anyways. And they cost even less to maintain. And they actually provide a lot of trade income. So Most of my trade income is coming from my home market Kaesong, but the trade offices in the other markets are also providing a fair bit, especially in the East Indies, and the Chinese markets combined also provide me with half as much trade income as my home at Kaesong. So I'm definitely going to shore up my offices in China and maybe even set up a few in Eastern Japan as well. Although the Akita market isn't all that profitable. Maybe if I were to colonize Hokkaido and get the fur from the island, maybe the salt from the island into the market, then it might be a bit more profitable, but I guess we'll see. Also, the Mercury ratios are operational, and this is just absurd. 11 ducats per level. 99 wealth, I mean, this is just absurd. Beyond my wildest dreams right now, what we're getting from our gold and silver locations. And all because of a single building. Gosh, the balance in this game is, in some ways, utterly, despicably broken. As usual, it is wartime. We have a CB on Kitabatake, and I'm definitely going to make use of it. This is also going to bring in all of the remaining Japanese clans, so hopefully we will be able to destroy, if not all of them, then most of them. I presume that a couple of the non-landed ones will remain and they're still going to cause us trouble, but that's alright, we will be able to defeat them later on. For now, I'm going to declare war. The enemy will only have about 5,000 men. I haven't even called upon mercenaries to fight this war. We're just going to do this the old-fashioned way, through the power of our levies. In fact, I'm going to go raise all levies, and then I will cancel the ones in Korea manually, and we're just going to fight this with only the levies we're getting from Japan. And that is one defeat, and given a couple more defeats, I'm fairly sure that their armies are going to be entirely destroyed. We are also occupying their locations here and there. We've got a couple locations down in Kyushu. We managed to occupy a couple over here. They have one fort here that we need to actually siege down. And other than that, I don't see any fortifications. Okay, maybe one over here. I mean, honestly, there isn't much going on in this war. We're just going to steamroll them, using only the power of our levies, who by now have grown to be quite sizable, and then we're going to full annex them if at all possible. The war ended as quickly as it had begun, and we are not able to full annex them. This single location will remain as our vassal, but I would say that's quite alright, we can handle that. The bigger problem here is there are still a few building-based countries remaining in Japan, and I'm fairly certain that as soon as we annex Kitabatake, they are going to declare their independence, so we will have to deal with them further down the line. But such is life. I'm going to send this demand, and there we go, Kitabatake is no longer in the shogunate. We have basically completed our conquest of southwestern Japan, and there are no independent countries, except for the building-based ones unfortunately, that remain in Japan. As for the building-based countries, we got one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here, I think. So I guess it's now bingo time. Feel free to place bets on who you think is going to declare independence and piss me off next, and we will see. My money is on these guys, the Yamaguchi clan actually, and obviously we can't destroy their buildings because why would we be able to, right? Even if I were to block them from building, like if we do this, they are still able to keep their extant buildings. I'm not able to destroy them for some reason. I was unable to do anything about them. I couldn't get war score against them in the war, etc, etc, so whatever, I guess. At the same time, increasing gold and silver output in the Kaesong market has made jewelry a quite profitable business, So I'm going to queue up a bunch of jewelry guilds across our country, and hopefully we're going to make bank on these. I mean, we're already making more than enough bank on everything right now. Like, look at that trade income. Look at that diplomacy. Why are we getting so much money from our vassals? Most of these guys are just out there in the wilderness. They shouldn't be producing money, but here we are, I guess. And our taxation is also pretty solid. Even though we can't tax the nobility or the clergy, we're getting more than enough money from our burghers in our capital and in our other large cities to account for that. So essentially we are still swimming in money, and even if the tribute payments were to cease overnight tomorrow, we would still get a huge amount of balance remaining. So we would still have something like 500 ducats per month remaining in pure profits for us. And with that in mind, I guess I'm going to go nuts with the colonization. Let's colonize Hokkaido. You can never go wrong with too much fur in this game. And would you look at that? I spy with my little eye A for American West Coast. We are literally going to discover the new world, hopefully before the Europeans did. I'm not quite sure where they are exactly. I have no idea if they've figured out there's a huge continent between them and us. But I'm not going to waste the opportunity. I am going to use the trade winds. Just look at them, tiny little arrows on the map. And I'm actually going to discover the Americas. Let us set sail from our capital to be of Dongne. Or maybe not, the current exploration there is stalled. Let us set sail from our naval governor in Osaka. And you seem like a pretty nice fella. And I'm also going to queue up another exploration of the Alaskan Sea so that we get as much coverage of the American West Coast as possible. Dongne now has 30,000 pops. To be fair, I could have just used a cabinet member to encourage migration. That would have also worked. But honestly, why bother? I'm just going to rely on a natural pop growth, which is fairly strong in the current stance of the game. And now we're going to make this into a city. Unfortunately, masonry and lumber are fairly expensive, but that's quite alright. You can't have your cake and eat it at the same time on occasion. So I'm going to go ahead, start building a city here, and once the city is done, most likely we will move our capital from Kaesong to Dongne, and we will move our local governor from Jinju to Kaesong. Actually, that's 94% here. Interesting. I thought you could get up to 100% in your local governors. Am I missing something? Oh, right, of course. Counting house. Oh boy. Anyways, we'll probably make Kaesong itself local governor. And we're also going to get another local governor, which we might pop down somewhere in northeastern Korea maybe. We still have kinda meh control in that area. Or maybe we could put it down in Uiju or Chosan, somewhere like that. So that we can use this whole river system here to propagate control across northwestern and even parts of northeastern Korea. So I did the back of the envelope math again, and it looks like we are not exactly on track to get all of the advances that we need. In order to get all of the Age of Discovery and the Age of Renaissance advances before the Age of Reformation, we would need to have 3.85 monthly research progress. Right now we only have a 3.25, which is going to be a bit of an issue here. Now I was expecting to get up to 70%, maybe even 75% average literacy near the very end, near the very start of the Age of Discovery, which would have been possible if we had not gone ahead and conquered half of Japan. Right now though, we are lagging behind a little. The most obvious method of increasing our research speed here is, of course, increasing the power of the liturgical language, but that's not going to be exactly easy since, we probably have to convert to Japanese, and then we're probably going to have to convert everyone to a Japanese culture, most likely Saigoku, and that's going to take some time, during which our power of the liturgical language is actually going to decrease a little. But not all hope is lost, or so I should say, because even if we don't hit 3.85 monthly research, we can still increase our monthly research later on in the Age of Reformation, and then, double down, come back, get some of the other researches in the Age of Discovery that were left behind, which incidentally are going to be cheaper to research since they'll be from a previous age. But, in general, I would definitely be much more comfortable if we had maybe 3.5 monthly research or something like that. Because right now it's going to be a fairly close thing, really. But anyways, we will see. And we don't really have any easy ways of increasing our research either. We could technically convert our country to an admiralty regime and then roll for a free tinker trait that way. It doesn't always work, but usually, semi-reliably, let us say, you can get an additional 10% monthly research progress. But, as I said, we'll see. We'll see. I'm also going to set up the wharf plus dock plus protected harbor combo in locations that have a decent amount of natural harbor suitability, and we're going to use this to increase our, or rather decrease our proximity cost when moving from sea to land. At the same time, I'm also going to start building a small road network that is going to connect our locations in Japan both to our local governor and to the local ports that will be receiving naval proximity from, at first, our local governor in Jinju, and later on, when we move our capital to Dongne, from our capital in Dongne. While I lost the bet, the domain of Kusunoki actually decided to declare independence first. And now we're going to have to get a CB on them, and then we will have to annex them. It is the year 1472. Without even trying all that hard, once again we beat Columbus to the New World, and the discovery of a New World event has happened to us. Now this event gives us a 20 prestige, 5 research progress, and about 3000 ducats a month. I think that's something like 6 months of income, which is always good to have, but unfortunately, the parts of the New World that we have discovered leave much to be desired, since there really isn't much to do in northwestern Alaska. Although I presume there is still fur here, and maybe some other goodies as well. So I'll definitely queue up a couple more exploration missions, and let's see what we've got. Let's see what we're up against in the northwest coast of the Americas. We have a bit of a problem in the new lands that we're colonizing in Siberia and Kamchatka, and that is that we don't have enough people living in them. So even though we are queuing up the ivory and the gold and the fur, these RGOs will not be filled at all unless we get some additional pops in here. And I presume the best way of doing that would normally be building settlements. Of course, available peasants. So I'm going to mass build settlements in all of our newly acquired colonial possessions. Also, we can also build them in Hokkaido, which has quite a few fur reserves on its own. And I'm not going to create another market here. In fact, we might actually destroy the market that we already have in order to spur migration to these areas. But at the same time, I think the these areas already have plenty of pops, so some of them will eventually migrate to Siberia, assuming that they all stay within the same market. It's the end of an era as we begin preparations to integrate the last province we hold in Japan, which has not yet been integrated. Once the province of Izumo is done being integrated, we will have toured all of the western portions of Japan, and seeing that we got this land in the mid 1440s, it's probably only going to take us 30-35 years. Let's see, how long are you guys going to take? Until March 1477? December 1477? November 1478. So I think it's going to take in total 34 years, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not quite sure when exactly we annexed Japan, but I'd say that's a fair price to pay for all of the land that we got. We've tripled our population almost, although I'm willing to bet that a decent portion of that is simply from the extra population growth back in Korea. But in general, the integration of Japan went much smoother than I expected, and our average literacy is decent. Like, ideally we would have gotten here in the 1450s, so we are like 20 years or so behind schedule, but you know, that's okay. I'd say that's a fair price to pay for getting Japan, since as the rightful Ashikaga shoguns, Japan is supposed to be our homelands. So I'm happy with the way that things are right now, and as soon as we have moved our capital to Dongne, we should be able to annex the eastern portions of Japan too, because even right now we have okay proximity along the coastline, and the interior of Japan literally has no rivers. There's only this single river system to the east of the country. So once we get a proper road network set up, we will be able to propagate proximity much more effectively too. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and queue up some roads starting from Osaka. Maybe this is not the best choice here, but I still think that Osaka, because it has a fairly high natural harbor suitability, is going to be an important choke point in the proximity calculations, even after we move our capital to Dongne. So I'm going to start queuing up the roads, and we should start getting a bit of extra proximity, especially in the more inland areas now. For the first time in 30 years, we finally have a cabinet slot that is empty, that we can use for something other than integrating Japan, and I think I'm going to change societal values here. Now, normally we would be much better off favoring spiritualist while we were in the process of converting Korea, but now that most of Korea is already Shinto, I mean, even in the most Buddhist locations, we have basically a plurality of Shinto already. We are going to go for humanist. And once we get to 50 humanist, that's going to unlock a lovely little reform for us. That's going to give us an additional 5% monthly research, which is going to be fairly useful since we are, as I've stated for the umpteenth time, research maxing. We now have maps over all of Australia, and it's my professional opinion that this is not worth colonizing. It's a whole lot of sand and wild game and livestock, also fiber crops and stuff. I mean, there are some gold deposits and the gems do sound nice, but honestly, I don't see the value here. Like, this is probably very low priority on our things to colonize list, especially considering that getting a dominion over the Spice Islands would be much worthwhile in terms of the monetary benefits that we can get. Like, the markets here are fairly valuable. Oh, this one isn't all that valuable, but okay, that's interesting. Why is the Ternate market only 290 ducats? Like, they should be making bank from all of the clothes trade. Interesting. And wow, we don't have any trade here? Okay, what if we look at... Oh, that's interesting. Clothes doesn't pay nearly as much as I presumed it would, actually. Very interesting. We probably have to do some development work here in order to actually make this spice trade worth it. I mean, technically, this is just an insane amount of wealth. Like, simply selling the clothes on the market should produce 100 wealth from these 3 locations alone. And yet, the market value is below the value of the clothes that is produced in just those 3 locations, not to mention anywhere else. So there's definitely something that's missing here, and I'm curious to see what exactly it is. But there is one region which is definitely going to be worth colonizing, not because of the resources or the monetary benefits, because let's face it, there aren't any, but simply because we need it to increase our colonial range. I am talking about the eastern coast of Africa. I am going to set up a couple colonies here. Let's see. This is actually owned by Kilwa. You know what, I'll just plop down a colonial charter in southwestern Madagascar. Because we only need to get one port location here so that we can continue exploring and ideally get across the Horn of Africa and find our way to Europe. I'm also going to queue up a bunch of granaries, and we will build some more as time goes on. Granaries provide an indirect boost to your population growth by storing extra food in the province, which is one of the major drivers of population growth. See the large food storage here. And this is actually the main driver of population growth that you can affect yourself, because cheap food essentially caps out at 0.07%. Available free land depends a lot on the population cap, and in any case I think it only goes up to 0.25. I don't really have the numbers memorized right now, but the large food storage, if I'm not mistaken, this can go up to 0.80%. But you need to have a massive amount of food stored. And I guess that's what we will try to do in this scenario. We are getting a rather low amount of food, mainly because we've urbanized practically everywhere. But the extra development and some of the other stuff, such as the rice-based tax, which is unlocked due to the Middle Kingdom, is helping out quite a lot. And I guess if I could figure out a way of keeping the tribes happier than they are, that could help, but you know, there are so few tribesmen that it's not really making much of a difference. We unlocked a new government reform, and unfortunately we don't really have anything decent to put here. Like the Admiralty regime I could definitely consider, but for that we would have to annex Shenyang first, which I'd rather not do right now. Otherwise they would break free of the personal union. And what else can we get? Maybe the fixed vassal obligations for the extra subject loyalty, which honestly we don't even need that all that much. We could just go back to the trade office network. So the thing here is, we are just waiting to get 50 humanism for the exchange of ideas. And until then we don't really have anything decent to put. So I'm just going to grab Royal Decree for now, which is going to give us a bit of extra crown power, and it's going to keep us from drifting too far into decentralization, because yeah, as you can see, it's not looking good right now. I'm also going to start consolidating some of our smaller vassals. So for example, the domain of Chuzhou, we are going to start annexing them. But before we've managed to annex them, I'm going to transfer most of their land to our other vassals. And ideally, we will reduce the number of vassals that we have in Japan to something like 7 or even less, if that is at all possible. For the first time ever, we have set our eyes on the New World. We now have knowledge of the westernmost coast of Alaska, and it doesn't even cost us all that much to actually create colonial charters here, since this land is practically desolate and, you know, not very well populated. I'm not quite sure whether I will start colonizing Alaska immediately. I think a better approach here might need to wait until we have maps of Cascadia and maybe start a small colony here. Again, we aren't really all that interested in colonizing the New World, and this is more of a side project that we are going to do while we wait for our research progress to tick up. But at least getting maps of the most valuable areas around Mexico, around the Caribbean, etc. could be useful, simply to get some of that sweet chili and cocoa and tobacco trade going. I'm going to consider things a little. Also, our cost of colonies is way too high right now, so I'm going to wait until at least the colonization of Hokkaido is finished and we have spun this off to a vassal of sorts to begin colonizing the New World properly. And Kusunoki is going to go the way of the dodo. This should be a fairly easy war. They do have a fort though, so we'll have to figure out some way of destroying that, or rather sieging it down. But again, this is going to be fairly easy because there are no more Japanese clans left. The ones that are left are all very much unlanded, so it's not going to pose us any real threat. And we researched, I'm not kidding in the slightest, probably the single most important technology for us. If you were to look at the construction's missing inputs here, you would see that Kaesong Market is short on tools. And do you have any idea why this is? Like if we go over here to the goods section, we definitely have more demand for tools compared to supply. But more importantly, if we go to iron, oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Well, urbanizing over food is okay, actually, because we've, all of those irrigations are working. We're still getting more than enough food for all of our population. But urbanizing over iron, that was the worst mistake that we could do. And now we don't even have enough iron to support our blacksmiths. And as a result, we have been short on tools for the last couple decades, I believe, maybe even longer. So now that we get the blast furnace technology, it's going to increase our iron output in our home market by 75%. And hopefully that's going to normalize the market a bit. Hopefully we will be able to, get away from the tool shortage here. But I'm going to let the game flow for a month. There we go. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is still terrible. Like, this is still a shortage, technically. But at least it's slightly better than what it was before. And slightly more manageable. And if we look at the raw materials map mode, we have basically two large concentrations of iron in Korea. One of them down here, along with coal, which is fairly important. The other is up here. So, I guess... Oh, but these are RGOs, right? So it doesn't really matter that our market center is closer or that they have a higher market access, all of that stuff. Because essentially, the more... RGOs, market access, I believe, does not matter for RGOs. They just produce the goods, send them to the market, and that's it. You always get the goods in the market available for you. It does matter for urban buildings, which is why you should definitely consider urbanizing closer to your market center whenever possible. But for now, I think this is going to be quite okay. And hopefully the tool shortage will resolve itself soon. I think I figured out a way to deal with the unlanded clans. If I vassalize them and then diplo-annex them, they should just disappear. Or even if they end up becoming landed, I should still be able to diplo-annex them, because right now I can't annex them in wars. I can't get war score against them. So let's try this. And hopefully this will work, hopefully this will not break any major systems or anything. And also we do get the location back in the peace deal, so that's nice. And finally, we are done integrating Izumo. With that, within the span of a mere 3 decades, we have integrated half of Japan. and the other half is held by our vassals, of course. And all of the citizens of these lands have become productive members of a Goryeo society. These are fairly wealthy, and we even managed to exercise a reasonable amount of control over all of these lands. Like we have a 95% going all the way down to the 50%, but in general, we have a decent bit of control. Like I don't think we're losing a lot of money by keeping these lands, and we're probably making a very reasonable amount in taxes. With that being said, the focus of our empire is shifting over eastwards, and I would definitely love to integrate the eastern half of Japan as well, but of course, all in due time. For now, we are going to trust on the explorers who are braving the unknown, who have brought news of us from a completely new world, and who are very close to rounding up the Cape of Good Hope and figuring out the sea road to Europe. And I realize that usually it works the other way around. You go from Europe to Asia, but you know, even at the start of the campaign, we broke with tradition. We went from Asia to Europe, and looking at our literacy and research progress, I would say that we did well by doing so. So, I guess this is as good a time as any to finish this episode. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, do subscribe so that you are notified when the new episodes drop. And in the next episode, we are going to chart the uncharted lands, and we are even going to colonize the new world. So again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all once again in the war room.